Where are you going to school?
Carnegie Mellon.
Okay. I remember going to Pittsburgh in high school. I took a bus there, and it was the first city I really saw with hills.
Yes. Yes, it is a very, very mountainous, not mountainous, but hilly area. I used to bike around a lot before my bike got stolen. But it is a very up and down city. What's cool about it, I mean, I guess I could, I'd have to turn off my computer or whatever, but essentially what's cool about it is when you stand at one level, you can see all of these different terrains and topographies. You know, you get this like cool slice of like hills and dips and valleys and river. So it's actually a very beautiful city, especially during the spring.
I mean, I thought so too. I love the river. I love the bridges. I got a mini New York vibe. I mean, there's an energy. The people talk a little different, and they're a little, like tougher in the street. It had a different sound. I mean, I'm from Ohio, so, but
they do have kind of it's a weird twang. I mean, not twang. I say twang, but it's a very idiosyncratic dialect, I think.
Can you mimic it? Can you?
Well, okay, I'm not from here, so I'll have to try, but it's like, going down to John Eagle, gonna get you guys some snacks. So Jesus Christ, if you go down any snacks, this will be a big fucking deal. All right, what do you guys want? And now it's out there for posterity to see my terrible Pittsburgh accent.
But I got a taste of it. I mean, it sounded unique to itself. It didn't sound. You weren't doing New York. You weren't doing Boston. You know.
It's very. Well, it's a very like swallowy language, or it's a very swallowy kind of accent. Like you don't ever touch the tip of your tongue to the top of your mouth. Everything kind of just comes in like this. It's very swallowy. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because you can make me think. I can't really know who they are, but it's almost like I can see certain like character actors or even energies maybe of certain movies where they did have that kind of talk,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, I mean, take place in Pittsburgh to know, where they're mimicking that.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, can you repeat that one more time? If that was a question, you cut out a little bit.
Well, I just was thinking, like, I wonder, because something about hearing that felt from, like, I was seeing like men in mustaches or maybe like some type of cop show, but I feel like there's, like, I was wondering what, like, if there's a movie or a TV show or like a
yeah, I'm trying to think if there are any.
Where did Silver Linings Playbook take place?
Good question. Probably in like Philly, and the way they talk in Philadelphia is very different. Well, Pittsburgh it's like this weird mixture of East Coast, but also Rust Belt. So it's kind of where Detroit meets like Boston in a way.
Interesting.
So it's a very working class city, but then you have places like where I'm at, where the universities and the medical center are, which are just these like megaliths of money and education and funding. So it's and there's a lot of issues with gentrification here. It's not all great. But there is this sort of weird mix of strange ways of expressing yourself.
What's the homeless situation like out there?
Oh, it's not great. It's not great. I mean, it's not as bad as some places in the West Coast. And there are a huge number of initiatives. But it's like any American city. I mean, it's bad when it's good and it's terrible when it's bad. So it's an interesting, but I'm from Houston originally. And then are you from LA?
No, I'm from Toledo.
Oh, that's right. You said you were from Ohio. Okay. So Toledo, is that a big, small? I'm a little unfamiliar.
It's below Detroit. And no, I mean, I think it's a decent sized city. It's not a big city. It's I mean, it's like a small town in Ohio, but not small,
So I'm curious about all the stuff you've got behind you. Are those ribbons or are those ties? What are those?
Those are though it's pieces of fabric. I noticed that people charged a lot of money for things like this on Etsy. I hurt my knee for the first time ever in my life just not recently. Some of
Mhm.
it's ex-boyfriend jeans, but that's just because it's fabric. But I just fabrics that were sitting around, and I just did this to, at first it was here, and then I made it longer. But sometimes I open it up. It's just fabric.
I like it. I like it a lot. It's very yeah, it gives the whole room sort of like I thought you were in a little workshop. Or is this kind of like your little work area?
It is. It's really supposed to be the dining room, but it's where I sit for the majority of my time, on Zoom. Honestly, it's a bit of a problem because I'm a smoker that I have a window here and I smoke, and I really wish I would take advantage of, my apartment.
Oh,
But
wow.
but instead I sit here. Yes, it's basically, but now because of Zoom and because of just everything and like learning art on the computer, there's a lot of computer time. I wish
Hmm.
I could, I don't know. Yes,
Breakaway.
yes, break away. And I wish I could break away from smoking, one, because then maybe I could sit in other areas of my world and create, but also break away from, yeah, from this. Like figure out, I don't know, because everything just fills with junk. The computer fills with junk. So it's hard then to go to it to like create more junk. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not the most organized person, so I become very overwhelmed by the chaos.
Hmm.
And even the comedy's chaos because like how you got to keep up with, like I used to, if I want to be clear of mind, and I've been this way in various parts of my life, but I'm a little bit out of hand. Clear of mind, I stay on top of like the writing. When
Hmm.
I'm starting to go cuckoo is when I've got like 4 notebooks working at the same time. I don't know which one I'm doing. I have no idea before I do them, before I do a mic or anything,
Hmm.
uh, and I sort of like that, but sometimes I don't, you know.
Yeah, I think sometimes, especially in what we do, there's sort of this romanticization of chaos where it's like, of course you need everything to be all over the place. That's where your mind needs to be. That's how you get the good stuff. And it's like, but sometimes it's nice to have a planner, and sometimes it's nice to have a system, and more than sometimes, it's almost always good to have that system.
Right,
The juicy creative stuff that happens in your pink stuff. That's where all of the random sparks and shit happen. But like out here needs to be relatively clean, or relatively, not too clean, not too sterile,
right,
but there needs to be something.
right. And I think it's too, it's like not too held down by it, like you can create a structure in the work because it's a terrible feeling to be like, it's a terrible feeling to, um, part of my resistance with like sticking to a set list or something like that is really the fear of being stuck behind the words. Like you're not
Mhm.
connecting to anybody. You're saying all the words, but like, and, and like your hope is to like reach beyond. It doesn't always work out that, it's like I pick one way and then I'm like, God, I miss that other way. But then the
Mhm.
worst part is when you want to approach the other way and then you're like, God, but I didn't do any jokes and I have them. Why didn't I do that? Why
Yeah.
did I share that? You know,
Yeah.
like,
I mean, well, it's like if you're making a smoothie, it's like, well, you can go to the store, you can get some bananas and some ice or whatever, or you can go foraging. And foraging is fun and it's cool, and you meet all sorts of satyrs and fairies and shit. But it's like but I also really need a smoothie. Like I'm very hungry.
right.
That's kind of a weird, contrived analogy, but I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
Um, so it's interesting that you say that, not being tied down by the words, you don't want to be behind this wall, this sort of the source code or whatever. From my own personal experience, I find that I dance between that too. I feel like there are days where I'm worried about every single goddamn syllable. I mean, just counting beats, counting beats. I mean, it becomes very poetic, and it becomes very, like I'm sitting at a piano. Not that I would compare myself to a pianist, because those guys are a lot smarter and a lot more talented. But you know,
I'm getting ding, 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 ding.
yeah, I'm playing chopsticks if anything. But then there's other days where I'm like, let me just sing for a second. Let me just go up there and try and, feel the words kind of coming out of me. Are you more, would you say you're more of a verbal person? Like you're from the diaphragm, from the lungs, from the mouth, or are you someone who really likes to sit and write?
Well, I identify with the writing. That's how this all came from. And I do a lot of it. Now, a lot of the writing now, though, with the stand up is repetitive. A lot of it, it's me just kind of writing the same thing. The reason why I have issues with doing set lists, because when I make a set list, I start generating more material. I start trying, and it becomes kind of bad if you have a show that night and then you starting off with stuff that you just made up. I'm talking about the show. I mean, I feel like I think it's great for generating material. I guess it's the best of both worlds, because one thing I notice is the first thing I abandon, which I don't like, it doesn't make me feel good, is the first thing I abandon is the writing. And that makes me mad at myself. Because I remember when I started stand up a little bit before the quarantine, maybe like a year, maybe I got into the quarantine with like a year and a half of time as a stand-up, committed to being stand-up. And the first thing I would abandon, like I said, would be writing, or not even honoring, like first insulting myself, saying I don't have anything planned, which is probably true because I didn't have structure. I think it's a fine line, but I do believe that the writing is majorly important, but I do also believe that there's something beyond the writing. So it's like, no matter, there's a point where you have to like kind of, and there's so much to learn. So this is a great endless craft. I feel like if you're working on one thing, then there's something else that you need to work on. But I don't even know if I answered it.
Oh, no, I mean, you did. In a sense that you talked about how you started with the writing, but then you have this sense, like this sort of sixth sense that, there's something beyond the pale. And that to me is one of the grooviest sensations about it. But then it's also the most frustrating, because it's always like hearing ghosts or like seeing things out of the corner of your eye. Like, what the hell is it? And you get, if you turn your head really quick, you get an outline, but then you try to look right at it and it's like, God, it's gone. And so it's very elusive in that sense.
Well, you know what? I'm going to be honest, though. I also think that not even think, I'm a little bit deceived still with comedy, because I sometimes still think that people are making it up. Like I go to, like, it's a magic thing. So I often, I'm quick to abandon, or not make decisions, hence abandon, I get caught up, and also sometimes get caught up in here and start with like, anxiety, things that can throw you off track. But I sometimes think that people are making it up, and I wish that I could, let myself know that they're not making it up. They've honed this. It's so natural. And maybe if I've seen someone before and they're always coming up with different material, or it seems like it, they're still like, now they have more of a bucket to pull from. They can pull from, and at the same time work out things that might be just learn, how things start out clunky. It's like funny, because just going through some of these old notebooks and thinking, you don't realize that some of these things you started saying like a few months ago, and now you start to say them again, and you didn't know they were even a couple months ago. But they're how the way things work, how they have to grow them, and the growing isn't always comfortable. And then you think you've grown it, and then you pull it back, and you kind of add a new frill around the edge. You're like, that might not be, I don't know. But I remember when you put your thing up that you were stopping, and then your public declaration. And then I remember when
yeah, my manifesto. Yeah.
but then I loved it that you came back and you were honest about that. And I feel like there's something about this, because it's vulnerable, but it's fun, and it's like we're a dig on it. And I think it's a great thing, and I feel like it's endless, and I feel like you can be look at all the various ages that come and do this. And last night I went to an outdoor mic. It was in a park. The park was totally empty because it was cold out in Los Angeles, except for the comics. And it was really beautiful. It was like, it felt like a comedic AA meeting. It was just, beautiful, and like I felt connected. It doesn't mean I'm not going to be scared shitless to go to an open mic at a club. There's certain muscles that I haven't, even with the Zoom, it's like Zoom was interesting. You build up confidence and then you put yourself out in the world, and then, you're hid behind your things, your words. And then you're like, okay, I can't do that. Now I've got to be present. And then you do something else that's a little off. It's not always definitive for me, at least. It's like you learn something and then you forget it, or
Yes,
you realize.
and thank God for forgetting too. Thank God for forgetting, because I think if I had all of the noise that kind of gets generated from my subconscious and goes into my conscious and like takes up residence, if all of that was there all the time, I wouldn't write anything good. Because I think it's this convenient, because I think the audience can also tell when you're rediscovering something and you all have this shared notion of like, this is neat. And obviously some of it's a farce. I mean, some of it is easily a magic trick where I'm like, oh, isn't it crazy? I just realized this thing I've been thinking about for 4.5 months. But there also is a truth to it. There is also, like, each time I say it, it's like, I am kind of discovering it. I am seeing a new piece of this bigger thing. I mean, it's like Three Blind Mice. I feel like that's sort of the approach that I have towards a lot of it.
I wish I knew what happened. Do they run up a clock? What happens to the three blind mice?
Oh, they have to describe an elephant, and because they're all blind and they're so tiny, their like viewpoint on it is very small. So one of them goes up the trunk and it's like, oh, it's very long and thin and has a hole at the bottom, and they're like, no, it's very big and tough and has these big nails. And so they each have a different notion of what an elephant is. And I think that's sort of what I mean, that each joke is really an elephant in a way, where you're talking about this aspect of life or language or love or beauty or death or eternity or time or whatever. But you're coming at it from like, well, let's look at a clock, or let's look at a sundial, or let's look at or sundial. I mean, let's look at da 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 da. And it's like, well, what is the actual thing? Am I actually talking about love, or am I just talking about sex? Well, it's like, well, you are kind of talking about love, or am I talking about family, or am I just talking about my mom? It's like, well, you are kind of talking about family. And there's no way to get at the whole thing at once. So let's just talk about it and talk about it and talk about it.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because one of the most recent, one of the most recent problems, I went to a mic a couple nights ago, and I got glitched, and I felt like part of the glitch was trying to make everything like, I was trying to make sense of some things. And then I kind of realized not everything needs to be put together. Like what you're talking about. I don't need to do a connector for everything, because then I start killing jokes. I don't need to tell you my reasoning. Unless it's quick, because I can get long-winded. It's so interesting though, or like coming at something that might be real and then coming at it like a joke. Like I need to pull back of another idea. I went to a past life regressionist years ago, and she told me terrible, terrible things. But instead I tried to come at it with a joke, and I'm missing what happened after. I'm getting caught in details. I'm telling you all the wrong things to the elephant. I'm saying, look in the trunk. Now look at this. Now let me try to like bring up the.
Well, but, yeah. Yeah.
Like, no, I gotta start like this. Like my kind of blind person, just feel the side of the elephant, like give you the shape, like, okay. And then go into it. Like I'm approaching it wrong.
Well, what's interesting about that is I almost feel like a microscope becomes a telescope becomes a microscope, in the sense that you start out with these atomic details, like, okay, what exactly, like, what are the nose hairs on the elephant? And you zoom in and you zoom in and you zoom in and you zoom in. And then now you come out the other end of it. There's been bits where I've talked about like how I felt walking into a store, and that became this like very, very, very detailed, messy, personal thing that you get more out of that than I would have just said, well, sometimes I get nervous in public. And it's like, that's okay. That's too much. That's too much elephant. Let's start with the most basic thing and go from there. So it's curious. Sometimes you don't have to rag on yourself too hard for going into detail, as long as there's a portal at the end of it, and there usually is.
There was no portal.
There's no portal.
No, you got to it, and then it's like the door's locked. Like, next time I gotta approach it. No, because I keep on doing this thing, and I think I'm focused on. I'm not even. I need to come at it because this is something that happened over 20 years ago, and I need to just go for the overarching and then go in for that one. Just because I'm missing the end. Like, why am I telling you this if I'm not getting to the portal? I move on. I don't get to the portal. I do because I'm not hearing reaction. And I think, like I told you, I'm not coming at it from just telling you like the honest truth. I'm trying to like jump on it via joke or whatever, which I also came into this resistant about jokes, like the stand up. Like I still had joke resistance, like as an improviser from the 90s. We learned that, it's like anti-joke. I mean, you can be funny, but like you're not, it's not about you like stealing it. It's about you adding to it, not taking focus. And joke was sort of like a dirty word, I thought.
It's interesting that you say that, because I also come from improv and I know the sentiment that you're talking about, where there's this sense that if you try to manufacture something, it kills the intimacy and also kills some of the humor, because it's very clear that you came in with an idea, you came in with a notion, and it must be hell on earth for people who were really into improv trying to do stand up, because it's like getting rid of that itch is extremely difficult. I mean, I was already very self-centered when I was doing improv. So it was like, well, I can talk about myself as much as I want. Who gives a shit? And my stuff's, my shit don't stink. It's fantastic. But being a good improviser, which I'm sure you were, and I'm interested to hear about that. I'm sure it's a lot harder to get rid of those good instincts.
I don't know. I think they were killed. I mean, look, improvising was a long time ago. I think it serves everything I do. However, I think I got a little too heady about it. At the times when I was supposed to be less heady, I got more heady. But I think it's actually probably harder for a comedian, a stand-up, to do improv.
I agree. Yeah.
Because I don't think that they, yeah.
No, I think it's also just because comics tend to be assholes. And there's just a certain degree of agreeableness that you have to be an improviser that is not always present in comedians. I don't think, there's to me, at least, the improvising element was always very cerebral, but the social aspect of it, I was very weak with. So as far as like connecting with people and understanding their emotions and playing off of that, not very good. But if you need me to come up with a on the fly soliloquy that, the captain of a banana ship has to do, going into a puppy capital at the end of the universe, it's like, oh, I got this easy. But that's just words. That's very intellectual. And so that's a very different muscle than like actually being able to be intimate with people on stage, which is what improv is initially.
I mean, I guess now I'm thinking like certain things I wish like one of those lessons with the stand-up that you can bring to it is like sometimes taking time in a moment to place you. Like I don't do a lot of placing, like, or look at, in terms of being a creator or performer, it's funny how, I mean, maybe not if you're doing stand-up, but I would think that it should as a human, but like how your voice changes, how you let yourself, especially as an artist and doing various mediums, and you can challenge yourself by changing, the way you're expressing it. You can do something performance arty, you can do something thematic, you can do everything's got a different thing. I feel like there was a point to, but I wish that certain things, like one of my favorite things with improv would be those times when you actually can see the world, like you're actually in the world because you can touch it, you can see it, you made it so, and it's a very special moment when that, those are special moments, because now it's not, you're in it. And I wish for stand-up, not to say, and that's great too, just being on a stage, when you're in it, grounded, but I'm talking about moments even with act outs or character where you actually are in it. Like I am holding this and it's not about Abby doing this thing. It's like all of a sudden I become that person, because I see it. And maybe it doesn't work like that with stand-up. I don't know. But even giving yourself time as a performer on the stage to see it, to like, and even like you're saying the joke about entering the store, to be in that world, to let yourself, and to a certain extent, you're saying you do that because that's how you chose to enter the elephant by describing, as opposed to just saying, I have anxiety when I'm out in the world. I'm going to get caught in the details and I'm going to let you know. It's almost to a certain, and you were saying earlier that you're triggered. You're triggered because you see it,
Yeah.
but
Oh
sometimes you
yeah.
probably feel it, see it more than others.
It's interesting that you say that, because this is totally a cognitive thing that I do just for memory. But whenever I'm thinking about a set list and I really need to memorize it, or it's obviously in Zoom you can get away with just having lists of shit in front of you. That nobody has any illusions about the ease of having set lists. That's fine. But just for my own health, for my bones, I like to try to memorize my set lists. And what I like to do is I like to position the jokes like mentally in space. And so I have a lot of jokes about like my apartment and my comic books, because my comic books are in my apartment. And as I'm telling them, when I'm pivoting or when I'm segueing, I'm literally just looking in my mind's eye. Okay, now I'm in the bathroom. Okay, now I'm in the kitchen. Okay, now I'm with, Alex Jackson sitting on my bed. It's 2020. Blah, 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 and so I'm kind of moving through this wormhole sort of situation. And so it's similar, I think, to what we're talking about here, where you're in it, where I'm like, I have to just sort of dip my brain into this space where I'm not even here anymore. I'm there. So
It's
there you go.
And it's interesting too, though, with stand up, because we don't want to get too in here, because you're all there. And
exactly.
And in real life, I mean, it sucks in Zoom when nobody's like looking or reacting to you. Imagine when you're out in the world and you're like, and it's like, but you're out in the world, but they're not far. They're right there, but it can feel so far when you're in here, it can feel so far when you don't cross
Retreat.
that threshold to get to you.
Well, yeah, but I guess then ideally what happens is I go back and then I reach my hand across the aisle and I bring that was really loud. I bring you with me into my room. That's initially what needs to happen. Is I don't want to be a fishbowl. I want us all to be fish and let's all swim around in the same aquarium. I don't want to live inside this little pocket universe, or at least if I don't want to do it by myself. And I think if I can for even a moment put you in the exact same sensory, emotional, intellectual, whatever space, just for even a second, I've done a great job. Maybe not as a comedian, but as a
guide.
Yeah, as a person, as a telepath.
I like that. That's interesting, because I don't usually, I've never thought that way. Like, I feel like this is going to be interesting. Like, I wonder how I'm going to, approach the next few days with stand up after our conversation, but, and just the few experiences out, like, how do you want to manage then? It's like, I often fall back into the habit that I do, but I wonder with me if it's the goal for me is like trying to get out of the way, just trust myself. And then maybe my channeling like that was just you enter the energy of the way I see it. Like, I'm not taking you necessarily in a play, but you're to try to give you an opportunity, which is the scariest thing, because if they can't come, it's like, if they can't understand your perspective, or they're going to judge your perspective on something. And I guess that's not our business either. Like, I can't think about whether you're going to, like, we got to get strong enough that like, it doesn't matter what kind of thing. And it's our job to do the best we can to get you to feel or see from our perspective. But I guess they don't have to. Like, if someone doesn't want to, if they're like, I'm not feeling you, I don't like you. I mean, I guess it's not their job to like say, like, fuck you and you suck, like that. You don't want that. But like, they don't have to. But I guess, I mean, like, to be an audience member, or it's nice getting, it's nice those times even as a person like that's in a stand-up, like at a mic, let's say, and you've got to go next, those times when you are enjoying other people's perspective, you're not threatened by their perspective, it's no measurement to you, you're not like thinking, like how to learn how to handle people who are excellent before you, like in public, like,
Oh yeah.
but like what happens when someone kills and like you're insecure and like what do you do with those, and it's now stirred up even more, and like how do you get up there and share after like they did, and
They detonated a bomb up there. Yeah. Yeah.
they did it, like how do you do that? I mean, do you know how to do that? I don't know the conscious way of saying.
Gosh, I can't tell you. I can't tell. Well, what's interesting, so I like to say this for every person that I have an interview with, or if I remember to at the very least, but one thing that's very interesting about your energy that I really can lock into, and what really just, I was like, I gotta have her on the show, is it's very, I mean, obviously it's very huge. I mean, just the simplest description would just be you've got this huge presence. You've just got this wall of sound coming out of you. But it's also very real and it moves fast and it hits all of these emotions. And I think for me, sometimes it feels like I'm on this roller coaster, but it's thrilling. And really, I mean, it's very exciting to listen to you. It's extremely, I mean, it's funny. It's very funny, but it's also just like, wowee, because you don't have any pretenses about anything. It's very clear you're just talking. You're just describing your thought processes about everything that pops into your head in the moment, out of the moment, left of the moment. And it's very cool. It's very, very cool to see.
Well, you know what? I'm going to say thank you because that makes her. And not everybody says, pays compliments, and also sometimes compliments are scary because then you feel like then you start to question, well, what is it? Can I do that again? Like, what is that? It's funny
Oh
because,
gosh, yeah.
I mean, like they're like a setup. Like,
Mm.
I realized, and I forgot to say this like the past couple times I've done stand up, but I was thinking words of affirmation is my love language. It's also my perversion. No one is going
Mm.
to ever say enough to fulfill like whatever the hole I'm missing. But also, it's also a terrible quandary because when people pay you, it's scary. Like it's, I'll run away. I might not show up again. Good
Mm.
luck seeing me at your show because I live in fear of disappointment. And
Ah, son of a bitch.
and it also works opposite. Like if I say job to come back to me, they're dead to me. Like whatever. Like a weird setup too. It works in reverse. Like that, I kind of wish that you want the mirror back. I appreciate you saying that. And it's funny because during Zoom and the couple times I go out, a lot of times people don't tell me I'm funny. They say, I like your energy. And I remember when I first heard that, it was just in the past, 6 months or whatever. A
Mm.
part of me would be like, what is that? Like, why aren't they saying fun? What is that energy? But I guess maybe it's all like lopped into the same,
Yeah, I mean, well, it's like it's similar to like, because, well, okay, when I'm talking directly to comedians, um, well, first of all, if I'm talking to you in this situation for the show, it's already a given, I think, that you're funny. So I think it's almost insulting to your intelligence if I say, well, you sure are funny. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, that's a given, and I think you are very funny. Let's get that out of the way first. But the point is like, well, what's going on there? Like, let's actually peek under the hood. And for some people, it's energy. For some people, it's persona. For some people, it's likability. For some people, they've got the tightest writing this side of a coven, or convent. You know, and so some people they've got this like id about them that's very. It's like this one guy I know. Every single joke he tells is very, it's like a story that he's telling to himself. Like he's like almost reciting it to himself as if he's like another person. And it's so groovy to watch because it's like you feel like you're, I don't know, it's you don't feel quite like you're sitting down anymore. And so everybody's got something, and everybody has something I can comment on. And I think you're right. Energy is maybe a big blanket term, but maybe if I could clarify it, it's vulnerability too. It's a maybe this is an oxymoron. It's a powerful vulnerability. Let me put it that way.
Well, as we mentioned before, it'd be nice to be able to, I mean, I feel like part of the job, it seems like, is a stand-up more than any of the other. I mean, I guess you need it with everything, but as a stand-up, I do feel like you got to do it to like thicken your skin. Like, I mean, I do, yeah, you gotta get tough skin as a stand-up.
That's very true. That's very true. Well, would you say that you're a, you know, tough person? Would that be a description that you would get thrown at you?
I'll tell you, I don't feel that way. Someone, I don't even know. I feel like someone last night, and I don't know why. Or maybe it's true. Someone made a strong comment to me, like whatever. I do not. I don't see myself. Look at. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Something about the person. Uh, I yesterday basically I was thinking that I think I'm like cotton candy, but it could be really home insulation, with shards, and you have to you have to take.
You got to take a bite to find out.
I mean, I feel like some of my maybe strength comes from maybe it's like self-defense, like growing up, like protection, against. I'm contrary. I've decided because I saw that movie In and of Itself. Have you seen that yet?
Mm-mm.
Have you heard of it?
I have not. I have not.
On Hulu. I don't know if you have Hulu though.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to watch In and of Itself, and then we have to talk about it. You can just message me on like when we do the Zoom together, or you'll send me a Facebook message.
Will, In and of Itself. All right. Anything I should know about it going in, or should I go in blind?
I'll tell you. He has these words before the show starts out in the theater. It's like I am blank, and there's just a huge board of words that people choose. And I think that maybe your word choice would depend on the day or just the energy of the room. But he has a lot of options. And my friend, for some reason, which I didn't think this, well, my friend, she said that she was bored. I didn't get what she meant. She thought that that was her word, which I don't even know if it would be a word, but I came up with the word the next day. There were a few words that popped up for me. I thought innocent. Am I innocent? Am I da-da? But then I thought contrary. And I really think that I have a sort of a contrarian nature because it was a defense mechanism. It's a defense mechanism. So I feel like, and it became difficult like a month ago with all that shit on Facebook and stuff because of my nature is to, I don't know, I go opposite. I don't always, that's part of trying to be fair, or I don't know, balance. It's my balance. It doesn't mean I don't agree with other people. It's just I always relate to the person who has failed or suffered or done wrong. Like I always identify with that. So I kind of go to especially with the stuff online, and it's probably the wrong point of view in this modern world, but and it doesn't help with jobs to be contrarian. It's like, so maybe that's what makes me seem tough or whatever, but I don't feel, I'm really wimpy. I mean, it's too vulnerable to be in a relationship, that's scary. And not always honoring, look, there's so many factors too, because it's like you've got to honor yourself. You can't shit on yourself. I mean, I've you like basic things, like you can't not, stand up can be scary too. You're like, is this healthy for over and over? Like, how can I balance this? Like, this is certainly a way I feel and see, but I can see that this kind of thinking might not lead to a healthy life. I don't want to put out there, I think I'm dying, and like, what if I make it happen? Like, am I allowed to talk about this? Am I putting this into the world, or am I just channeling this other side that I need to balance that in my real, like, then I got to look at this, like, this thinking might not be healthy. Did I make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's a certain volatility, I think, to truth. And I think if you grab it, and I mean, it's the same reason why these like logicians, people who study logic, people who study the truth of truth of truth of truth, they go fucking insane, because it's like there's no real reason to assume that reality is soft and pleasant, and there's no real reason to assume that if you know something and you have the truth inside of you, that that makes you virtuous, or that that makes you sane, or that that makes you safe. There's no, it's a completely amoral thing. And so you can spend all day wrestling with stuff that might be the most, have the most veracity possible, and it's like rubbing a cheese grater all over your head. It's like, wow, this sure is real. It's like, yeah, it is, but your face looks like Swiss cheese. So I mean, it's the same thing. It's absolutely the same thing. I have the exact same anxieties. Like, is this where I want my mind to be all the time? I mean, Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, though, can you talk a certain way on, I mean, people do, obviously. It's like people, like, can talk about their husbands or wives and still go home and love them. They are just channeling a certain aspect. But I mean, that other aspect does have to be balanced, I think, to be healthy. It's like, I don't want to talk about killing myself. I don't want to do this forever. And it's going to look really bad. See, honestly, some of those mics, I start feeling bad because I see myself, I'm smoking, I'm talking about death. I'm, 30 years older than some of these people. And it probably looks like, yeah, you're gonna, and like, that's so scary. Or like, you're afraid that you're going to die the next day. And then everybody will say, well, the 7 people that were at the mic said that she predicted it, whatever it is going to be, wherever you go.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, or then trying to be honest, like making room, like, despite how I talk about like intimacy, I really do feel like, to a certain extent, the cloud is like sort of waving over, and I'm just getting a little wisp of maybe it would be nice to be intimate. Like maybe letting that grow, and maybe it'd be, then I guess if you try one day, then at least you get more material,
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's interesting that you say, because I almost feel sometimes like we have this idea that stand up has to come from this like, this horrible sea urchin of darkness and horror and gasoline and just Sixth Street scum. And it's like, not necessarily. Okay, for instance, like, talking about, killing yourself, which I think, I've talked about on stage and you've talked about on stage. So there's no reason, we could just rip the Band-Aid off. I like to think that part of me likes talking about it because it is cathartic, but then there's part of me that's also like, but like, look at why I stayed, or why I'm here, or like what's on the other end of that. Let's talk about the self-destruction. Let's talk about wanting to just, annihilate yourself. And it's like, but yet I'm still here. I'm here now. Why did I stay? What could possibly have made me want to maintain this? And if I'm still here to reduce the power of it, And so there's this sense that you have to have all lights and no shadow. But it's like, if you look at how dark something is, well, the darker the shadow, it must be the case that the sun is out. And let's look at that for a moment. But if you look at that for too long, you can't understand what's actually going on the ground. And so you have to be able to navigate that.
And you might be, that might affect your sight for a while. If you look at the light too long, then you'll be like, but what I liked about what you said is, and I think I'm going to try to keep this in the back of my mind and not necessarily just let it float, because you said earlier, portal, that you give them a way out. You're taking them through something. So it's like, because you can talk about, something dark, but if you don't give them any light, that's our job too. That's our job. Our job is to do that. And sometimes you can forget, you can say, or you remember, I guess you're right. It could be a crack at the end. Like you probably could go really actually heavy, dark in a set, maybe give them some light. You could even, but then maybe give them a light at the end so they don't worry about you. I don't like when you leave stage and you worry about you. I mean, that sucks too. About you. And the nature of this shit is that, I don't know about you, but the anxiety can come 24 hours before. Like that, it could be a mic, it could be a show. You make it, it doesn't, it's not a thinking about it. Could be the worst thinking, and you could even have the thinking like, I'm doing this thinking again. I'm ruining it already. It's not,
Mm.
can I get out of this? The weirdest thing, which I don't like that, and I'd like to one day to learn how to overcome not being intimidated, like trusting yourself enough that like whoever's in front of you, that you can show up for whatever it's worth and do the best job you can do in the moment. However, there's also the cunning thing that can happen. Like, it's happened to me. I pressed leave before on a Zoom and cried right after I pressed leave. But it also can happen, like, we're 15. You look handsome when you pull the glasses off. You're good, not that you're unhandsome.
Well, thank you.
15 minutes after, a scorpion tail can come and zap you, and then something starts happening. It's weird the way, and how to learn to maneuver that. Like, I still have that. Otherwise, it's an unhappy career. It's too much. Sometimes I think it's too much. Like, if I can't manage that, how am I going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
No, I remember. Gosh, I remember I had a bit about feeling extremely jealous of someone who worked at a pharmacy, because she was a pre-pharmacy student and she was getting to do what she was going to school for. And it's a very simple thing. It's a very, but it when I was performing it, or when I was doing it, I was really talking about how genuinely upset I was that here's this person, she's applying herself and I'm like barely able to make rent. I'm barely able to get grades. I'm barely able to do anything. And I felt very little. And I remember writing this and writing it, and rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it. And I do almost everything longhand. And so, you feel it in your muscles after a while. And I remember, okay, put a punch here, change that word, really being very meticulous about it. And I performed it. And one guy was like, well, and I said at the beginning, I'm like, look, I don't usually do long form stuff. I usually do quicker stuff. This is me being a little bit longer, and this is my foray into it. And he said, well, if this is your so-called foray, you might want to try writing some jokes in the damn thing. And I don't usually freeze, but I was like, oh, all right. And I wrote down on the piece of paper, am I a loser? And then boxed it like 15 times. I was just like, I was like, am I really, what am I doing? If I can't even do this right, what the fuck am I doing? And it was this, in the moment I could see the scorpion and the scorpion tail, and, but it right on the forehead.
Mike, I said one day to a host, I'm like, I think I have to turn off my video right now. I might cry, So I guess I've had it a couple times. The leave one time when I cried, the writing the host one time when I cried, because you're also putting yourself out there. I know that energy, like the energy of the drop, the energy of the almost like, or I was out of myself. What happened? And if you don't tape, I don't listen to my tape. I probably should. I don't know how I'm going to guess you do, but sometimes I don't. And there's certain times when I don't, that I want to, because I do know though that I probably make it worse than it is. Really, whatever happens in my head is way worse probably than whatever happen on the outside.
That's always a given. You have a very powerful imagination. I can't imagine. I think I've often described it. It's like I put together these medieval weapons with which to flog myself with. I got this dungeon of scalpels and flogs and thumb screws and tongue ties and flails, and I'm kind of an evil genius where it comes to torturing myself.
Oh my God.
It's insane. It's yeah. So you're probably right. It probably is a lot worse up here.
Yeah.
But that's where taping, I think, that can really come in handy. That's my one PSA, is to tape everything if you can.
How often do you listen to
it? Kind of religiously, actually. It's sort of what I usually do is if it's a bit that I really need to work out, I will meticulously write, like longhand in my journal, write down every single word. And if I do a filler word like anyway, so I write that out too and red. And so if the thing looks like it's bleeding, well, then obviously I didn't do a very good job. But then if it's a little bit scant, it's very anal. And I would, I mean, it's
what are you studying in school?
physics.
I just, is physics like a cousin of math? I mean, what's it really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I feel like some great comedians are mathematicians, and what you're doing. I know there was a woman that I used to perform with. She's written for the most amazing shows. She's in a lot of things. She went to University of Chicago and was a math person. Has just excelled in the comedy. She's not a stand-up, but excelled in the comedy career. And I remember having an old book of old school comedians, and like some of them are mathematicians. I mean, it is like that. So like that, see the way there is. I pumped my gas before and it went over 60, like 60. I forgot the difference between hours and dollars is what I'm telling you. I'm fucked up.
Well, time is money, Abby. I don't think there is a difference.
Well, I got no sense of time. How about
There's a
that?
difference when your shoes are covered in oil. Yeah, I got you.
But I can understand that why they would feel connected to that, and why they might, because
Well,
I don't.
it's very I get very ruminating. So for me, it's like I get very like I start thinking in these like loops where I'm hearing the same word and hearing the same word and hearing the same word and hearing the same word, and it's sort of the same way that I approach a lot of the work that I do. Is you look at the same pattern, you look at the same pattern, you look at the same pattern, break. You look at the same pattern, you look at the same pattern, you look at the same pattern, break. And so it's a very pachu to do in my head that's going on, whether I'm performing or whether I'm doing homework or whatever. I mean, I'm painting a very beautiful mind picture for you right now because maybe my ego is tickled and it's like, oh, I get to talk about all this shit going on. But there is this sort of rhythm that happens. I mean, I like to think about things in rhythms and kind of in shapes and stuff, and it definitely comes across that way. But this is all to say that when I record myself, I listen to myself all the time. I mean, maybe it's an egotistic thing, but it's just always in my ear.
Now, is it bad though? Like, what happened if you listened to something before you did a set? Would that be detrimental or would that be good?
What, like if I listened to something that I did or
Yeah,
someone
like,
else?
let's say, because it sounds like you probably organized, like you randomly picked. Let's say you randomly picked some, because for me it would be random. I don't know what I'm talking about in any of these. So if you listen to it and then you had to perform, wouldn't that influence? Like, you might not have even remembered that you said something, and then you just heard it, and now you're going to go out. That could be distracting.
I see. Okay, no, yeah, I know what you mean. Well, a lot of times when I'm listening to something, I'm not just listening to it for memory. The memory aspect I mean, I feel like things memorize themselves. You do them enough, it'll happen. Just make sure you're focused on what you're doing. So I'm not super worried about memorizing. The reason why I record myself and I listen to myself is I'm looking for tags and I'm looking for avenues. So it's like if you said, well, if you walk to the store, then the next time you walk, will you walk to the same store, even if you have to go to a different one? It's like, no, but I'll know the neighborhood better. And so it's the same thing here. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. It totally makes sense.
So, but there have been times where I have listened to bits that didn't really work out too well, and I convinced myself they did, and then I went up and I did them, and it was vomit worthy. So it depends. It really depends.
Well, on the other side of vomit, you can feel better. Sometimes vomiting makes you feel better. So
that is very true. Yeah.
And it might make you say, I'm never going to eat that again, or I'm never going to go to that restaurant.
That restaurant, yeah, exactly. I will not be walking to that same restaurant again. Because But
it's a nice neighborhood, but
yeah, it is a nice neighborhood. Oh gosh, how are we doing on time? Let me see. Usually it's 11. Okay, it's 11,
Is it
11:03. 11:03. All right. Well, let's see. So I usually have these go for an hour, although this has been a very lovely conversation. Let me see. We're sitting at, it should say on the live recording, I think we've been talking for about an hour. So
Yeah.
before I guess we cut it loose, is there anything that you'd like to plug? Or actually, I recently I asked Ronnie right before you came, if he had any words of wisdom, any kernels of truth that he wanted to say. So I maybe I'll start asking that as well.
Will you tell me Ronnie's words of wisdom? And where is he? Is he in LA or New York? Where is he?
He is in, I think he's also in LA. He might be in LA.
Yeah.
He's in California.
Okay.
Oh, what did Ronnie say? Oh, don't make me remember. Oh gosh.
Don't worry. We've talked about a lot of things. We've covered some terror. Hey, look I don't know how you even do this. You're in school. You're Barbara Walters. You're like,
Ladies, all right, let's.
right. She didn't. We'll see. I wonder how many years she has left. She's up there.
Oh yeah. I miss her though. She was remember when she was on The View. That was her. Yeah, no, that is Barbara Walters. But oh gosh, I can't remember. But if you have anything, if you got any little, whatever you want to tell whoever decides to watch this.
I don't know. I mean, I just think I wish I wasn't so bleached out by the sun. There's this. I guess that's better than you seeing like that. I look like a leopard full of liver.
Oh, I think you got a fine complexion. You're good.
Whatever. I don't know. I mean, look, no words of wisdom. I just, more like a prayer. Like, may we get out of our own way. May we not compare. Maybe may we realize that our perspective is just as valid and valuable as anyone else's. May we honor our inner voice, the flame to shine. I don't know.
I think that's beautiful. I think that's absolutely, well, it kind of reminds me of something told me is that, your audience is out there. They're there and they can't wait to meet you. So
that's so nice. I've never heard that. That's a neat thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it was someone on a Zoom call many moons ago, so I couldn't tell you who said it.
And in terms of plugging, I don't know. I make art. If anybody ever wants art, if you need any art, if you need any art, let me know. I don't know. I'm doing shows. For some reason this weekend I'm doing like a bunch of things. Like this is my biggest week, and of course I don't post it. I mean I put it on my story, but I got to learn. I'm secretive about the stand-up thing still, and I got to.
I'm not as secretive because I am technically like live and I do plug this show, but like for instance with this show Aesthetic, I don't really tell people it's not even on the flyer that I host it. I just want people to come and I make it as good as I can. And I want people to see my stuff, but I don't tweet. I don't really plug things. I don't really, it's not good that I do that. But part of me is like, it should just speak for itself. If you come, you see it, you like it, who gives a shit? I'm not looking for Lorne Michaels to sniff my farts. Who cares?
I know, but it's funny because about a month and a half ago, I did have the first dog because I feel like I did a lot of this to get over myself. I wanted to get over stage fright that I, residue from years ago and all this shit, get over myself, express myself. However, then about a month and a half ago, I realized, wait a second, but I want to do it more. I want to do it. I want to perform for people. I want to be, like in my ideal world, I would be over get over myself and I'll get to do the thing that I want to do, Anyway, but no, shows tonight. I guess I'm doing a thing called Story. I'm doing a show with Luke Lindale. He's doing whatever. These are glorified mics, but I'm doing like a thing with Luke Lindale. I'm doing a show on Facebook, Story Smash, which is an interesting show. Then tomorrow, I might go to this thing in a parking lot tonight, but I'm scared. Might make an excuse and not show up. And then tomorrow is like I'm finally performing at Flappers. I haven't done that in ages, just whatever everybody's performing at Flappers, but doing a show at Flappers, but doing a show before then, I forget. Yeah, there's a couple of different things, shows, whatever, but shows like I don't know.
It's all this.
I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know, What, you know how it works.
I do.
Gotta do some math.
Oh God, getting the pachu to do. Yeah, maybe, I don't know, burn some incense.
I'll burn sage.
Very good.
Don't
Well,
forget to watch In and of Itself. I want on Hulu. In and of Itself.
I'm writing it down right now. In and of itself.
I think you're gonna have. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it.
All right, I will, and I'll have my thinking cap on.
Please, Frank Oz directed it.
Frank Oz, got it. All right, Abby, how do you pronounce your last name, by the way?
I'm Schachner.
Schachner.
And I know, and I say Zivian. Zivian.
Oh.
How do you say it?
Zevon.
Yvonne.
Yep.
But it looks like, so it doesn't have an I after the V?
No, just
Why
Zevon.
did they make it Zevon then? I don't.
Well, it looks a little bit like a messed up Vivian. I mean, if you break off the Z and move the piece off, I guess, you know. But yeah, it's Zevon, and I go by Z as well. Z is fine.
Well, I'm glad that you finally told me, because in the beginning I should have asked. Was that I always enjoy seeing you. I'm so glad you're back doing stand up, and you know, and I'm so glad I get to had this conversation with you today.
Absolutely, this is one of the better ones. I feel like maybe I'm getting better, but maybe I just keep picking better people, having better days. Who knows? But these interviews are really popping off.
Yeah.
All right, Abby. Well, I'll see you this Tuesday.
Have a great evening and a great day.
You too.